15 minutes is all it took for the cabinet to dump the shocking ordinance that sought to shield tainted lawmakers. The same cabinet that discussed the issue twice and cleared the ordinance just a week ago, today decided to undo the damage. Call it the power of public opinion, the power of an activist media, the power of Rahul Gandhi. One thing's for sure, tainted politicians can't get away easy, not anymore. Of course, it was a dramatic day's developments with the Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi meeting the Prime Minister earlier this morning, and then there was a meeting of the Congress core group where an in-principle decision was taken to dump the controversial ordinance. After that, the Prime Minister drove down to Rashtrapati Bhavan, met President Pranab Mukherjee, briefed him of the change in situation, and then sounded out all UPA allies the fact that the government is going to now withdraw this controversial ordinance. 6 p.m. is when the cabinet met, and in 15 minutes the ordinance was thrown out. Let's first get a reaction from Congress spokesperson and INB Minister Manish Tiwari, who said the decision to withdraw the ordinance was a unanimous one and the move does not undermine the Prime Minister's authority.
The decision of the Union Cabinet was unanimous, and as the Honourable Prime Minister had articulated yesterday, that democracy is not a monolithic authoritarian system of government. We respect the diversity of views, and yes, there was a view which was articulated by the Vice President of the Indian National Congress, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, and possibly he was taking into his tweet the widest possible feedback that he had got with regard to this particular ordinance. So therefore, under those circumstances, the decision was reconsidered, and it was decided that we would take both the bill and the ordinance back.
Political reactions flowing in thick and fast. Remember, there was a lot of drama today as well with the NCP, which is led by Sharad Pawar, expressing some reservations over the government's U-turn. We've also got reactions coming from Samajwadi Party, which says that this is a dark day for Indian democracy. The BJP is guarded, and it says that this back and forth has only undermined the authority of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. Listen in.
It has nothing to do with morality, legality, validity or constitutionality. It is the sheer power of dynasty before which the Prime Minister and the Cabinet meekly submitted. What has happened today is a confirmation of what the BJP has been saying, that in this government the Prime Minister or Cabinet is not important. Who is important is the dynasty.
इस सरकार का चीर कर लिया। राजनीतिक व्यक्ति को इतना कमजोर करना चाहते हैं कि राजनीतिक व्यक्ति जनता के हित की लड़ाई लड़ ही नहीं सकता है, और राजनीतिक इतिहास का ये काला पन्ना लिखा जाएगा।
Okay, for more on that big story, we're joined by a special guest on the show this evening, Professor Bibek Debroy from the Centre for Policy Research. Professor Debroy, always a pleasure chatting with you. I've got 3 direct questions for you. Firstly, it's a simple one. Who gets the credit?
I don't think any one single person can be apportioned out the credit. In the earlier reportage, one should also have mentioned the President, who after all did not sign the ordinance. If one person is going to get the credit, I think it's the public at large, citizens at large, who have been pretty unanimous in condemning not just the ordinance but also the bill, which is still floating around.
But what about the larger question that, in a sense, this entire controversy undermines the authority of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet as well? The fact that in this case probably a wrong decision was taken by the Cabinet, and that's been the damage has been undone. But the fact remains that a decision that was taken, considered by the Cabinet, approved by the Prime Minister, gets thrown out just because the Congress Vice President decided it's not in the nation's interest. Does it undermine the authority of the Cabinet?
Yes, absolutely. You see, there are 2 separate issues. First is the process about which you are asking the question. And of course, the process leaves a lot to be desired. After all, it did go to the core committee. It then went to the Cabinet, and Cabinet cleared it. And all of these views should have been taken into consideration earlier. And even if the Vice President decided to express his reservations about the ordinance, he could have waited for the Prime Minister to come home. So yes, so far as the process is concerned, there are very, very serious question marks about how this government is going to function in the remaining months that are left, particularly because this is not just about the Congress party, it's also about the allies. On the process itself, again, I'm not very sure what is going on, because I understand a decision has been taken to withdraw not just the ordinance but the bill. But the bill, you see, once it has been placed in Parliament, I think it's up to the standing committee to decide what should be done. And apart from the present bill, there will have to be a separate bill, because after all, the Supreme Court judgment is still there, and the Representation of the People's Act will have to be amended to reflect the Supreme Court's judgment.
Where does the Prime Minister, Professor Debra? He was never popular with the opposition, and turns out, he's not very popular in his own party now. And the manner in which, he's been snubbed in this entire issue, where does this leave Prime Minister Manmohan Singh?
Well, the Prime Minister, unfortunately, since 2009, has had very little credibility and is becoming worse and worse. And this was really the last trigger. And one could argue that the Prime Minister should have resigned. But my take on that is, if he was going to resign, he would have resigned long ago and not waited. So obviously the office of the Prime Minister has been denigrated, and unfortunately part of the problem is that it is not something that will only apply to this particular government, but it is something that will be left as a legacy for the next government, whatever be its political composition.
Final word then, does Rahul Gandhi get some credit at the end of it all? The fact that he's at least seems to be a lot more sensitive to the wider public opinion, the fact that there was an outrage over this ordinance, and that, but for his strong intervention, probably, the ordinance would have gone through. So in a sense, does Rahul Gandhi get some credit? And do you get the feeling that the Congress now is a little more receptive to criticism from the public at large?
I'm not very sure about criticism from the public at large, but I do think that what the Congress is trying to do is to ensure that Mr. Gandhi gets some of the credit, as indeed he does, for the outcome, though I wish the process could have been better. So I think this is partly a signaling on the part of the Congress party that they're increasingly going to listen to Mr. Gandhi in the period leading up to the elections.